Something is definitely shifting when it comes to the Palestinian story. For what feels like the first time, it's really taking center stage in the West. But as the world finally starts to tune in, are we actually hearing the right voices? Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful argument from veteran journalist Dr. Ramzy Baroud about who truly has the right to tell that story. So, Dr. Baroud really kicks things off by pointing out this huge shift. For decades, he argues, the Palestinian experience was just pushed to the sidelines of any conversation in the West. But now, as you can see in this quote, that voice is stepping right into the middle of it all. And this isn't just some passing media trend, he sees it as the result of a long and incredibly difficult fight for visibility. Okay, but this new spotlight brings with it a pretty critical challenge. Dr. Baroud really makes us stop and ask, as we finally turn our attention to the Palestinian narrative, are we listening to the voices that actually represent the people on the ground? Or are we hearing a version of the story that's been, filtered, or maybe even twisted?
And that question, who gets to tell the story, brings us to our first major idea, this turning point for the narrative, and the very real dangers that come along with it.
Right, so here's where Dr. Baroud's argument gets really, really sharp. He suggests that now that mainstream platforms can't just ignore the Palestinian story anymore, a whole new tactic is starting to emerge. Instead of just trying to silence the narrative, he says external forces might try to control it. And how do they do that? By promoting voices that look Palestinian and sound Palestinian, but are actually serving a totally different agenda. It's a real warning to look past the surface. This whole idea of a controlled narrative leads us straight to the absolute heart of Dr. Baroud's analysis. It really all comes down to one fundamental question: who truly speaks for Palestine? To help make this distinction, Dr. Baroud borrows a really powerful concept from the famous intellectual Edward Said, the idea of the native informer. Now, this isn't just someone with a different opinion. It's a very specific role. It's a figure who looks like an insider but is ultimately representing outside interests, often hurting their own community in the process. So, on one side, you have this native informer who is often promoted and controlled by outside forces. But on the other side, you have what Dr. Baroud calls the organic intellectual. This is the voice that grows from the ground up, right? It's shaped by lived experience, by the collective struggle. Their authority doesn't come from some platform that was given to them. It comes from their deep, unshakable connection to the community they represent. So who are these organic intellectuals in Gaza then? Well, according to Dr. Baroud, they are not the commentators you see in distant TV studios. They're the journalists who are still filing reports from amidst the rubble. They're the teachers trying to educate kids under impossible conditions. The students documenting their own reality. And yeah, even the children whose words and drawings tell a story of incredible resilience. They are the narrative in its most raw and authentic form. Okay, so this brings up a really important question. What about the Palestinian diaspora? What's their role in all of this? Dr. Baroud gives a very specific and, I think, powerful answer. He says their job isn't to speak for the people in Gaza. Instead, their job is to be conveyors, to build the channels, to amplify the signals, and to protect the spaces so that the voices of those organic intellectuals can actually be heard around the world. This whole distinction between authentic and inauthentic voices, it naturally leads to a conversation about authentic action. Dr. Baroud argues that just like the Palestinian narrative is often misunderstood, so is the long, complicated history of Palestinian resistance. He makes this really powerful case that resistance is not some modern invention that's tied to just one political group. No, it's a legacy. It's been passed down through generations, a continuous struggle against colonialism that goes back way, way before many of the names we hear in the news today even existed. I mean, just look at this timeline, and you can see how deep those roots go. Dr. Baroud points to the huge general strike against British rule way back in 1936, the Fidayeen movement in the late 40s, which was made up of refugees literally just trying to walk back to their own homes, and, of course, the popular uprising of the First Intifada. Each one is a chapter in a much, much bigger story, and he argues that understanding this history is absolutely essential if you want to separate the idea of resistance from any single political party. Then Dr. Baroud offers this fascinating way to understand the nature of resistance itself. Think of it like a tree. The armed struggle might be the visible part, the trunk and the branches, but he argues it cannot survive if it gets disconnected from its roots. And the roots are the popular, everyday acts of resistance from the people. One just can't exist without the other. They're part of the same living thing.
Okay, so if we get the authenticity of the narrative and the deep history of resistance, what does that mean for the rest of the world? This brings us to Dr. Baroud's challenge to the international community and the new role that he sees emerging for regular people all around the globe.
And he really pulls no punches when it comes to what he calls performative activism. He is deeply critical of these expensive international conferences that just generate a lot of talk but no real change. His take on it is brutally pragmatic, as this quote shows. The money spent on flights and fancy hotels, he says, could have rebuilt a school or fed families in Gaza. It's a direct challenge to focus on impact over gestures.
So this critique of institutions leads to a really powerful conclusion. Dr. Baroud argues that because governments and big international bodies are failing to act, a huge shift is happening. A vacuum has been created, and global civil society, that's ordinary people, activists, grassroots organizations, is stepping in to fill that void, to build new connections and forge a new path forward.
And this isn't just some vague idea. Dr. Baroud points to very concrete examples. We're seeing civil society groups providing the deep, painstaking research that fuels cases at international courts. We see them organizing direct actions like boycotts and flotillas. And maybe most importantly, we see them actively trying to create whole new legal and political frameworks to challenge the status quo from the ground up.
And this all builds to a stark and incredibly urgent call to action. As Dr. Baroud puts it, the time for cautious debate is over. The question he leaves us with is a haunting one, isn't it? If not now, then when?
And that really leaves us with this final thought to chew on. Dr. Baroud's entire analysis is about authenticity, authentic voices, authentic action, authentic solidarity. So it kind of turns the question back on us. In a world where we are drowning in information, how do we cut through all the noise? How do we find and lift up those organic voices? In short, what does it really, truly mean to listen?